Health insurance in the Netherlands. I'm always getting asked about this, so I thought, hey, let's talk about it today. So, a little bit about me. I have two chronic illnesses. I have both fibromyalgia and Crohn's disease. It's wonderful. I got fibromyalgia about 8 years ago while working in corporate. I think that was a tipping point for me. And then I learned that I had Crohn's disease this year, but when I look back at my life, it really makes sense that I have Crohn's disease. All right, so my history with health insurance has been a little bit shaky. And so I really, really appreciate the health system in the Netherlands. But basically, both of my parents died by the time that I was 10 years old. And when I was 10, I became a ward of the state. And so from when I was 10 to 18, I had health insurance through the state, which was really great, despite the fact that I didn't even have adults to drive me to the doctors, but that's a different story. And then I had health insurance for another year when I went to college, and I was a broke college student. I was putting myself through school, working 30 to 40 hours a week, putting myself to school, repeating myself. And then my health insurance got cut off. So from 2011 to, no, I don't know what the dates is, but basically about 4 or 5 years, I didn't have health insurance at all. And that was devastating. And I think that really impacted my health. And from my standpoint as an American, I don't think that anyone should ever have to deal with not having health insurance, which I love the Netherlands because it makes healthcare accessible for everyone. You don't have to be rich. And then I started corporate. And when I started corporate, I had amazing healthcare. And I loved it, and it was really great. Then I switched jobs, and my healthcare got a little bit worse than the first one. Then I switched jobs again, and it was a little bit worse, and I had to pay more. So I've really experienced the whole spectrum of healthcare, from state healthcare to no healthcare to 3 different types of corporate healthcare to now, I guess it's a more socialist type of healthcare here in the Netherlands. And I think out of all the healthcares that I've experienced, I really, really appreciate the Netherlands healthcare system. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about, first of all, how much it costs. So there's obviously different plans, but basically for Mike and myself, I actually spend 130 euros a month, and that's just the premium. And that's because I have a very low deductible. If you have a higher deductible, your monthly premium is going to be cheaper. And I also opt for alternative care. Alternative care includes things like I've gotten acupuncture with it before, and I've gotten shiatsu massages with it before. And actually, chiropractor is also considered alternative care. It's not a main staple in physical therapy. So there's a whole ton of things that fall under alternative care. And it's not like it's 100% paid for, but you get about 40 to 60 euros back, depending on your plan, every time you go to see an alternative care therapist. So that's awesome. Mike's insurance is only 80 euros a month, and that's because he's a very healthy person, and he really only goes to the doctors every so often. Like, he goes to the physical therapist sometimes because he's overdone it with running or something like that. By the way, we're both 32. And so that's the difference in premium. His is also much cheaper than mine because he has a higher deductible, because he doesn't think that he's going to be doing tests or going to the hospital or any of that sort. So that is where the difference lies in ours. His very bare minimum, higher deductible, and he barely uses the medical system. As for me, when I was in New York, my monthly premium pretty much cost between it actually was $130 a month. So between New York and Amsterdam, my monthly premium was very, very similar. And this is where the biggest differences lie, is that every time I went to the doctors or the physical therapist or some type of specialist in the US, I would either have to pay a copay, which was $20 to $40, or I would get slapped with some hidden lab fees, like $1,000 from some blood tests I had to do, because I was constantly getting tested because no one could figure out what was wrong with me. And then they eventually just labeled me as having fibromyalgia. My view on fibromyalgia is that it's just a label that doctors give you when they can't figure out what's wrong with you. And I guess I'll go into this on another video, but basically just to take down your symptoms and break them apart, because overall, all your symptoms can look like so many different other illnesses, but if you tackle symptoms separately, then you'll start to feel better, which is basically what I did. So anyways, I was spending $500 a month on copays alone in New York. And now there are no such thing as copays here in the Netherlands. So that's my favorite part. So my monthly premiums are about the same, but copays are non-existent here. And people will say, no, we have copays here. And like, no, you don't. You have deductibles, which we also have in the US, but we don't have copays. So my €130 premium here, my deductible is only €385, and I've already hit that. So anything over €385, I will never see a bill for, and there's barely any surprises here. Whereas in the US, I'm not sure what my deductible was, but I would still get hidden fees because things weren't always covered by my health insurance. So those are the differences in the health insurance price and health insurance deductibles and as copays. No copays. Moving on to prescriptions. I love prescriptions here. Basically free. For me, they're free. Occasionally, the pharmacist will be like, "Ooh, you have to pay for this." And I'm like, "Oh no, like how much is it going to be?" And she's like, "Well, it's €11. And then the next time when you come back and you actually need the prescription for longer, then it's free." And I was like, to me, €11 is basically free, because in the US, if I need something like an inhaler because I have asthma and that's a necessity to my life, that at one point I had 3 different corporate insurances. My first one covered it, and my second and third ones weren't as good. Then I had to pay $100 out of pocket after insurance paid for it. So there's a huge difference in how much prescriptions cost here. That being said, doctors don't really like to give you prescriptions unless it's absolutely medically necessary. So things that you can get easily in the US, let's say Adderall, Xanax, that kind of range of stuff, muscle relaxers, things that can also be used recreationally, they're very stringent about giving out. So one of the symptoms I have with fibromyalgia is chronic muscle tension. And when I first moved here, it was so bad. I was on the couch for like 8 hours a day or more. I would set up my water and my food on a little side table, and I would try to minimize getting up as much as possible. Of course, that turned into a really awful cycle, and I probably made myself sick more, and I've gotten out of that, luckily. But what was I talking about? Oh, okay. Really bad muscle tension. So I asked for muscle relaxers to see if I would help. And the doctor was very against that at first, but he knows my condition. So he did give it to me for 2 weeks. And he said, if I actually really need it more, then I can get a new prescription for it, a more regular prescription. And I actually never ended up taking it. So I do like that aspect about the Dutch healthcare. I used to be more holistic in my 20s. That's also because I didn't have health insurance. I think that played a big part about being holistic and healing myself with nutrition. But here, they don't really like to give out too many prescriptions. That being said, a negative of the Dutch health system is that it's rare to find a doctor who's going to give you the prescription that you actually need when you need it. I've heard a lot of bad stories. Like my friend had a UTI, and ladies, as you know, when you get a UTI, you need, I forget what it is, but it's like antibacterial stuff basically, or whatever it is. And I had a friend go to a doctor and said she had a UTI, and he recommended her take paracetamol. Paracetamol is like a less strong version of Tylenol, I would say. And that does not help UTI. And that's basically like a lot of doctors here will just recommend getting paracetamol. And if you go even to, it's like their version of the CVS and you get cold medicine, their cold medicine is just paracetamol with added caffeine. So you're not going to get, like, when I go back to the US, I go to CVS and I basically raid the whole pharmacy section and I bring stuff back with me. You don't have that here. People don't really self-medicate as much, and that's not as tolerated. I think that they're a little bit more conscious of a consumer's well-being here overall. So that's how it is with prescriptions. That being said, I mean, at the same time, so my first doctor here, I didn't really like him. I didn't think they were very attentive. And then I switched my doctors, and my new doctor is great. Same thing's going to happen in the US. Like in New York, I had a doctor who's okay. And I think, looking back, they were all just kind of okay. And they didn't really give me permanent solutions. They would give me Band-Aids of prescriptions that maybe I didn't exactly need. I didn't take. And I had a lot of like slap a Band-Aid on it kind of advice instead of treating things from the core, healing from within. And I think it's the same. People complain about the doctors here, and I think it's a matter of switching doctors and finding a new one. So that's how the doctors are. You will get a lot that recommend you paracetamol, and that's probably not helpful. When you have a cold, when you have like a fever, unless it's not terribly bad, most of the time doctors just kind of tell you to, just wait it out, drink water, wait it out. That's the general approach here. Something I don't love actually is that you don't really go to the gynecologist unless you have a serious issue. You don't get a pap smear until you're over 30. And when you're over 30, you only get one every 5 years. So I'm over 30 and I actually still haven't gotten my letter saying that I should get a pap smear. And it's been quite a while since I've gotten one. So that's something different to get used to. It's a matter of getting used to the system here. It's different. Okay, so now we talked about the doctors. All right, something that's very different here. I'm going to talk about being chronically here versus being chronically ill in New York. Something that's very different here is that if you need to get tests done, when I first moved here, like I said, I was on the couch for like 8 hours a day. I was feeling awful and I really wanted to get more answers. So my doctor got me an MRI. They didn't have a spot for me for another 3 months at the hospital to get an MRI. And that was a big shock to me because in the US, if you want to get an MRI and you have healthcare, you can get it the next day. So here, I thought when I first moved here, I was like, oh my God, the system is terrible. I have to wait 3 months. I had a doctor that wasn't really great. And then I switched doctors. And then this year, I actually learned how the Dutch healthcare system works. So in April and May, TMI, I was basically having bloody bowel movements from 12 to 14 times a day, waking up in the middle of the night. I couldn't eat because it was too painful to pass things. I couldn't drink water sometimes. And I lost like 10 pounds in 2 weeks, just all water weight. I was super, super sick. And after a couple of weeks of this, I had experienced this back in August, but then I went to Vietnam and it went away. It must have been the food there or something was better. I don't know. And I experienced this again in April. And after a couple of weeks, I felt like I was dying. And I was like, something is really wrong. This happened again in August. So I was like, I really need to get this checked out. But COVID-19 was just happening and I didn't want to go to the doctors. So I sent them a message telling them what was going on. And they're like, you need to come in right away. So they did some blood tests and obviously there was something wrong in the test. And the next day they got me to the hospital to do a colonoscopy, or the 2 days later. So from this experience, I learned that if they're able to tell there's nothing very like pressing going on with me, then doing tests, I might have to wait a little bit. But I've learned that if there's something wrong with you, very noticeably wrong with you, they're going to get you to the hospital right away. They're going to get you the treatment that you need right away. And I think that's just like a reflection of the system here, because since it's not privatized, I guess, they have to be more selective about who gets treatment right away and who doesn't. And I've learned that if you need treatment, you will get it right away. So that's my experience. That's also my experience. Like I go to physical therapy 3 times a week. I usually do some type of allergy treatments once a week. I used to go to the doctors like every other week. So it's been a heavy use of the medical system here and it works. All right. This is for my ladies out there who want to have a baby. Oh my goodness. I am so surprised in the US, even if you have health insurance, it might cost between $2,000 to $15,000, varying in the state, varying on your health insurance. If you have a C-section or a natural birth, that it could still cost that much money to have a baby. So I didn't know that. It's when I moved here, people are like, oh, are you going to have a kid? I was like, well, eventually. And then they said, well, if you're going to have a kid, definitely have one here. And I started looking into why. Oh my goodness, it's so expensive in the US. And here they take care of everything, anything above your deductible. The only thing they charge you for is actually the ambulance. So if you're fine, you might as well just take an Uber. Giving birth here is different. When my sister had her first child, she was a single mother. I was there. I was like, I don't know. I think I was 22. She was like 27. We had to share a room with somebody else. I slept in the bed with her and I was like, oh my goodness, what do dads do? Like, how do people accommodate both the parents when they're giving birth. And in the US, they essentially don't if you don't have the money. Here, my friend tried to request a private room, and they're like, why are you requesting a private room? They're all private. Not only are they all private, I think that there's also space for your partner to sleep. So it's very comfortable. And then they also send a nurse with you home for about 5 to 8 days after you give birth. And she's basically like a walking baby encyclopedia, and you can ask her whatever you want. And she's there to help you out, not only with the baby, but she'll help you out. She'll do dishes, she'll do your laundry, she'll do whatever. And that's to help you assist your lifestyle when you have a new baby, because it's really, really tough. So that's cool. Definitely going to have a baby here. And that's definitely the biggest difference between having a baby in the US and in the Netherlands. I think that about covers everything that I can share about health insurance in the Netherlands versus the US. And I hope this was helpful. This video has a long time coming. And since we're on a YouTube, I've never done this before, YouTube Live. It's just going to be a stream of consciousness that you're watching to this point. So if you've made it here, thanks so much. If you have any questions, definitely pop them below in the comments. I'll get back to each and every one of them. You can also DM me on Instagram. It's at Sarah to Treat. I'm available there as well. And if you have any other questions about the Netherlands, living in New York as well, that's where I'm from, being a travel blogger, I'm all ears and open to answering your questions. So thanks for being here with me today, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.